Welcome to another edition of Spits and Suds. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Gavin Spittle of 105.3 The Fan. Unfortunately, this is the first of our many off-season Spits and Suds, but we are so glad to continue to be with you. We have so much to talk about. We have off-season news. We have draft coming up. We have free agency. And then training camp will begin before we know it. And we are so lucky to be joined by our NHL insider coming off his coverage of the Memorial Cup. Brand new article I'd highly recommend that you read in D Magazine, kind of recapping the playoffs. It's our very own Sean Shapiro, who you can subscribe to his Substack. It's called Shap Shots. Hey, Sean, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing well today. I'm bummed that we're having this conversation. I mean, the thing is, I knew you and I would be talking on Tuesday either way. I was just hoping it would be about 10 hours from now about a game 7. So I'm happy to be here, happy to be chatting. Just still kind of weird to think that after all the fun we had with all the games, we now no more post-game shows, no more cold beers, no more cold beers at night. So I'm
It's kind of like a relationship ender where every once in a while you get that reminder and you're like, oh. And so one of the interesting reminders, Sean, was Nick Maroc, also known as Bang Guy, and Nick listens to Spits and Suds. In fact, said last episode, are you going to mention me? So, of course we are. But Nick, I don't know if it was a scheduled tweet, but basically it was a dry cleaning picture of your white jacket, and it said, Game 7, here we go. And it just stung. It just stung. So I don't know if it was a scheduled tweet, Nick. I don't know if you were playing, but I mean, listen, you're a great fan, but boy, I'll tell you what, when I saw that tweet, it was like, you know, a breakup and you see something that reminds you of the lady in your life or the person in your life. And I was just like, yeah, because tonight would have been special. That's for sure. Absolutely. Well, the timing of this podcast is very interesting as the boys headed home, and as far as kind of the last time they're spoken to, and the news coming out is that Joe Pavelski will not be returning next season. He announced it, and all the media outlets that were there covering it mentioned that, and wanted to get your thoughts, Sean, on just an absolutely, if it is the end of the career, which we're all assuming it is, what an amazing run.
Yeah. I think some people are, I think he said, I think the exact terminology, and I'm reading directly from Taylor Baird's tweet, who is Pavelski said, this is it for me. Says it's not official, but he's known for a long time that this was his last go, and the plan is to not play next season. So there is the door, I guess you could say, is probably technically open, but it's, I believe Pavelski's at his word, and we've talked about it on this podcast before, where we kind of felt that maybe we were watching the last of Joe Pavelski's career during this run. So it is and I wrote something quick about this that had been kind of ruminating in my mind for a couple of days now, and I just kind of put pen to paper on it and wrote it up right before we popped on the pod here. Was this is an end of a Stars era, and to go when Joe Pavelski left San Jose, I don't think anyone ever thought his lasting legacy would be anything other than Mr. Shark, right? Like to see him come to Dallas and have his tenure in Dallas and what he did in Dallas, the fact that people will now look back on Joe Pavelski's career and think about his career almost equally. Now, if you're in San Jose, you'll think about it more in San Jose. If you're in Dallas, you think about it more in Dallas. But like to the outside observer, if you're not a Stars fan or a Sharks fan, you're going to think about Joe Pavelski, Dallas Star, and one of your lasting memories of one of the greatest American hockey stories for an individual. And man, I would have never expected that when he signed here 5 years ago with Dallas. That never would have been something I thought would have been possible. I thought this would have been just like no one thinks Mike Modano as a Detroit Red Wing. Like I thought that's how this Pavelski end would have been. And instead he completely changed the culture of the team. Um, there's a really good story. My good friend Ryan Clark from ESPN has a story up yesterday or the day before about Pavelski's impact and how he's helped individual players. And there's so many stories. It's not just the taking Wyatt Johnston into his house. It's the him being the guy who understood how to be the father figure for everyone and anyone on the roster. To be the guy who, when um, Esa Lindell was struggling after a loss in that series against Seattle last year, he goes and just sits down with Lindell and chats with him. It's how Joe Pavelski made Jamie Benn a better captain. Jamie Benn was, I think, one of the key things. I think Jamie Benn has always been a very good captain for the Stars, but I think one of Jamie Benn's problems is he struggles with the media and public facing parts of being a captain. It's one of the things where that's not a knock on Jamie. That's just the reality. I think Jamie's the lead by example. He's not the I'm going to be eloquent in the media. I'm going to be like I don't think Jamie likes the public side of it. And Pavelski came in and became that captain without a letter who kind of allowed Ben to not carry all of that load, to be the guy and he made Jamie Benn a better captain. I think part of the quote unquote Renaissance from a couple of years ago is the lack of pressure on him because of what Pavelski helped him with across the board by his impact. I mean, this is a guy where the Stars, when you look at the Stars as a team moving from one window to the next and being one of the power players in the NHL like they are, it all goes back to Joe Pavelski choosing to come to Dallas.
Let's start there, Sean, because I love going back in time and thinking about things. And that's something I've reflected on because we need to even go back before the signing to the trade deadline when Matt Zuccarello was picked up and how the acquisition and the transition into the lineup to me was seamless. And Zuccarello was so good for this team in such a short span that this was a really hard decision. And I think a lot of people would have sided correctly so with Zuccarello. Zuccarello has been terrific in Minnesota. So, but that was a big decision. And then all of a sudden, Joe Pavelski comes into the picture. Also, we need to remember, it wasn't the fastest start for Joe Pavelski as the transition happened. And the first quarter to half of the season, Sean, there were some not boisterous, but certainly some question marks like, oh, wow, does he have stuff left in the tank? So for those two things to the evolution of what we're talking about today is truly remarkable.
Yeah, and the other thing too to remember is, and I don't want anyone to, it's going to feel like this, but I want to be clear that this is not taking a shot at any other human. So please know this. But to get the Pavelski signing done, the Stars had to buy out Val Nichushkin. And I remember when that happened, there were some people who were like, why are you buying out Val Nichushkin? And obviously Val Nichushkin has a Stanley Cup and everything like that. So, but it goes even further to that, where the Stars had to make sacrifices to bring Pavelski in. And there was a lot of people who thought like, well, okay, let's see what happens. And what happened has changed the franchise. It's extended Jim Nill's career in Dallas. It's extended some other careers in Dallas. It is really like it's really impressive. And it is I was down there in Dallas for Game 5, and and I wrote about this in my piece. One of my favorite times at the rink is I love like 9:50 to 10 a.m. at the rink is before the morning skate. The ice is smooth. It's a blank canvas. And I just like getting into the rink at that time because I just love kind of just taking it all in. It's just a calm moment in a very hectic life. And that's when Joe Pavelski would build his career. Joe Pavelski would be the first person out on the ice 30, 40 minutes before skate. He'd work on these drills. He'd work on these little things all by himself. all before someone else eventually joined him on the ice and would shoot pucks so he could tip them. I mean, this is a guy who you talk about. He's obviously He's a great athlete. You don't reach the NHL without being a great athlete, but this was someone who created a potentially Hall of Fame career off putting in the little work every single day and doing the right thing every single day above and beyond. It is it's an American hockey success story. Let's call it that.
Absolutely.
Because that's what it is.
Yeah, late round pick, fought for everything he's ever received. Proud to be a Wisconsin guy. 1,332 regular season games, 1,068 points. I know plus minus is not everything for a lot of people, but plus 201 for your career. And as far as a playoff, he just went over 200 career playoff games, 201, 143 points with 74 goals. And I also want to, it was just last year, feels like years ago, the Matt Dumba hit on Joe Pavelski. But we talk about moments where the American Airlines Center crowd was buzzing. That return game from Joe Pavelski and what he pulled off, to me, will forever live in Stars history.
Yeah.
It's just, there's so many things. And then you say, boy, I really even have to look it up just to, to know, because I feel like he's been here forever. Sean, it's been 5 years.
Yeah, no, it's been 5 years.
I feel like he's been here for 12.
Yeah.
In a good way, as far as the impact. So really, really tremendous. Question. I'm not saying we knew this, but would this be, you and I were pretty adamant as far as we don't mind Joe Pavelski dropping down on lines, but you and I were adamant as far as him staying in the lineup for numerous reasons.
Yeah.
Do you think management knew that this was Pavelski's potential, including Pete DeBoer's potential last run, and that?
I don't think that's why he's I don't think that's why he's sitting in the lineup. I don't think that's I don't think that. I mean, I think if the Stars truly believed, they always felt that their best chance to win was with him in the lineup. I don't think you don't put sentimentality over a chance to win, and I don't believe, and Pete DeBoer is not that person. So I truly believe that Pete DeBoer and Jim Mill believed that their best lineup was with Pavelski on the ice. And so I don't think that. I don't think this. I think everyone kind of had a feeling this might be the end, but that's not the reason he stayed in the line.
Is it too early to talk Hall of Fame? Another episode?
It's a fascinating question,
really
right? Like
is.
it's one where it's like it'll be interesting to see. Honestly, it'll be interesting to see what things look like in 5 years when he's eligible, because he's a guy who definitely should be in the conversation for what he achieved, but he also lacks he lacks a couple of the key tenets where you're like, okay, if I'm defining a Hall of Fame player, like he was never a more than a point per game guy as a forward. He never won the Stanley Cup. And I know that's a team accomplishment, but that's a big one that people get accounted for. So I don't know. Like, he's a USA Hockey Hall of Famer. That I don't know the rules for how long you have to be retired to get into the USA Hockey Hall of Fame, but he'll go into the USA Hockey Hall of Fame as soon as it's allowed. The NHL, the Hockey Hall of Fame. That's a fascinating question, and one where I don't feel like it's a good debate for you and I to have, and I've talked about it before, because the Hall of Fame election process is so flawed and behind curtains that we're wasting time if you and I try to break it down on what the opinions of 13 people will be 5 years from now. So that's kind of the unfortunate part of how the Hall of Fame works. So
no, makes sense. Sean has a brand new article out. Actually, two. He has one on Joe Pavelski on Shap Shots, which you can subscribe to, and also D Magazine today. The title being "The Stars' Best Players Failed When Dallas Needed Them Most." I thought it was a great read, Sean. I do want to jump to the ending, and I hope you don't mind me doing this.
No, go ahead.
Because in the end, you ended with the following quick paragraph, because for the third season in a row, the Stars will boast the talent to play in a Stanley Cup final. Now it's time for someone to lead them there. Can you talk about what you meant?
Yeah. So the big key here, and I look at like people talk about, I've seen a lot of public narratives of like, oh, maybe the Oilers' depth caught the Stars and everything like that. At the end of the day, I see the best player in the world, the best players for Edmonton making plays. I see Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and Evan Bouchard making plays for Edmonton in the key moments. The Stars' top forwards, their top players, they didn't deliver. And it's as the Stars' depth was good. Like, let's be honest, it was good through that series. They did their job, but when Jason Robertson, aside from a hat trick in game 3, doesn't do anything for 5 other games. When Rope Hintz, even when he comes back from injury, is a bit of a ghost after one game. Matt Duchene, not much after game 6. Miro Heiskanen offensively, only 3 points after 13 in the first 2 rounds. Thomas Harley, 15 goals in the regular season, zero in the playoffs. These are the things, these are the moments where depth is great and everything like that. But sometimes, somewhere, you need your top offensive players, your top forwards to step up and deliver. And that was the biggest difference in this series. There's so many if you took so many of the Stars games, you took game 1, you take game 1 where they lost in double overtime. Yes, I know they hit the post on the power play, but okay, there's 17 other minutes before McDavid scored in the second overtime. Jason Robertson does something there. You know what? It's 1-0 in the series. And you know what? Maybe it's even 3-0 in the series before maybe it's even 3-0 after Robertson's hat trick in game 3. In game 5 and 6, when the offense looks stagnant and boring, like just one moment changes things. And the Stars, if the Stars are going to get past this Western Conference Finals hump, and to be clear, having a Western Conference Finals hump is a great hump to worry about as opposed to some of the other things for NHL teams. But this is a space where the Stars, to get over, they need their top players. They need the guys who are on the marquee. They need them to step up, and that's why Edmonton's in the Stanley Cup final and Dallas isn't. And Wyatt Johnston, I think, did as good of a job as he can. But it can't just be your youngest player. It can't just be the guy who just turned 21. It's got to be these guys who are allegedly your core and your superstars that you're building around. You have to do something more. That's my big deal.
So here's my follow-up question to that. Minus Matt Duchene, everyone you mentioned is part of the youth core for the future.
Yeah.
Robertson, Heiskanen, Hintz,
Harley.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've talked about Robertson for a few years now in the playoffs. I guess the question is how does that knob get turned where you can come up big in situations, or can it be turned?
I think it can be turned. I think, I said this to someone the other day on the phone. Like, I think I look at I want to see if I can find the numbers for it. I kind of look at Robertson. He kind of needs a bit of his like Ovechkin moment in the playoffs, right? So like, and I want to be clear, like, so yes, Ovechkin had a decent start to his postseason career, better than people want to give him credit for. He had 9 points and as a 22-year-old, 21 as a 23-year-old, and everything like that. But like for Ovechkin's from his 25 through from his 25 through 30-year-old seasons, he was not a very good playoff performer. He was below a point per game, much below what he was not nearly at all what he's in the regular season. And then when Washington won the cup in 2018, like it was kind of that, like he started taking that next step. He started doing everything. He started not letting all of the other impacts on him bother him and everything like that. And I think that's the thing. I think Robertson can do it. I don't have I don't I believe that it's there. It is just it's something that it's something that Robertson himself has to dig down and figure out because I think Robertson is so good at taking intel and applying it and everything like that. Now he needs to use this playoff lack of performance and apply that intel to April and May and hopefully June next year.
There are players, Sean, that I'm going to use Corey Perry as an example. I guess Pat Maroon would fall under that as well. It's probably old school thinking by me, but I'm kind of an old school soul when it comes to hockey. But do you think then that, and we're going to have so many offseason discussions, do you think Dallas needs to bring in someone with that, I've got a couple of cups or I've been to 5 cups experience into the room?
No, I don't, because I think we started this podcast talking all about Joe Pavelski. Joe Pavelski has 0 Stanley Cups.
Right.
Right? And Joe Pavelski changed the entire culture without having won a Stanley Cup. So you don't need that. Like, I mean, I think cups are important and it helps at times, but like just because someone was on a team that won a Stanley Cup doesn't mean they're necessarily the right fit. Like it doesn't hurt. Like that's definitely a great point on the resume, but then you have to look at what they did with what they did with that body of work. So to me, it's more so of I think you have some of those natural growths already in this room. You're going to have Wyatt Johnson will be better next year. Logan Stankoven will be better next year. I really hope Maverick Bourque is a full-time player for this team and they let him run right away. I think Miro Heiskanen has a ton of playoff experience now. I don't think you need to go get a Pat Maroon or a Corey Perry or whatever. I think you have a lot of that in this room. I think it's more so of it comes down to an execution thing. It comes down to pure execution of can your best players be the best players when the games matter the most. I don't think having a Pat Maroon or a Corey Perry on the team is going to make Jason Robertson better find space. That makes sense.
So another question then becomes like Thomas Harley, big off season for him and contract. I'm assuming one does not have to do with the other. But it was making, I'll just say this, it was making me think during the playoffs, maybe you go a bridge deal rather than a long-term deal.
I mean, I would personally go long-term on Harley, because I think that's how you, as a team, from a team perspective, I think that's how you maximize some value here. I think you bypass into those UFA years, and it's going to be expensive. I think it'll be a little bit more expensive, but I personally, I'm high on Thomas Harley's long-term build, and if Thomas Harley is only what he is now, I think that's still going to be worthy of what you could get for a long-term deal. I think if I'm Thomas Harley, though, I would push for a bridge because I think there's going to be spots for him to make more that way. So personally, when it comes to Harley, I would push for the long-term deal from a team perspective. This might be knowing how the two sides probably look at it. You might see something like a Robertson type deal where it's a 4-year deal or like a 4-year deal or something like that, where it ends with him in RFA status, but an RFA status where the player is well situated for big money with how the contract is structured.
You've covered a lot of these quote unquote exit interview days.
Yeah.
Do the players give you a sense? I'm sure they just want to get out of there. I'm sure they're still hurting. Have they ever given you a sense how long? I mean, we remember that iconic picture of Jamie Benn sitting in the locker room alone after losing a potential, cup, and just sitting there and kind of just taking it all in not necessarily a great way, and how much that hurts. And you saw several players, whether it was about Pavelski or about what just happened, nearly in tears. And Tyler Seguin talking about this is why the game of hockey is so hard. I thought it was a great quote and great explanation, and kudos to Tyler Sagan as far as, really putting this season into perspective and putting Joe Pavelski into perspective. I thought Wyatt Johnston did a great job, those that were speaking, but you could just see the emotion. Have they ever given you a sense as far as how long it takes to get over things like this?
I mean, in the moment, people aren't over it. So that's honestly, it's a great question for October. It's a great question for November. It's a great question to the Stars of how long will this simmer? How long will this sting? Because I feel like part of their motivation against Vegas was getting over what happened against Vegas the year before. So that's a year. Like, I mean, I think eventually you move on, you start working on it, but I think it's just kind of a tiered type thing where at first it's all you can think about. Eventually it kind of moves to the background but it doesn't truly go away, I think, until you find a way to get revenge or make up for it, and that takes a long time. So
also want to plug that EP Ringside, who Sean works for, and Sean did a lot of work as far as the goaltending scouting. EP Ringside with a terrific draft guide that just came out. Sean, really excited to talk about the draft in the next couple of weeks. I'm sure we'll get someone on regarding that as well on Spits and Suds.
Yeah, it's a great draft guide. It's up there right now. Go check it out. We will talk a ton on this show on the draft. We'll do a nice little draft preview. I'm gonna send Gavin the guide here so he can do his own digging. And then we can go through and we can talk some guys of what the Stars might do, things like that. So check that out. And it's that's out there, and it's been a wild week of hockey, Gavin. I mean, between everything with the Stars, and like it's amazing that the most amazing thing to me in all of this is it's June 4th right now, and the Cup final hasn't started yet. The fact that the Cup final could go to June 24th just feels a bit long to me. So
yeah,
that's the crazy thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And just from a hockey fan preview, I'm really excited to kind of take in this Cup and the different styles and see if Florida can break that trend as far as penalty kill ability from Edmonton, if the Stars continue to shine from Edmonton. I know Stars fans, it still stings. It stings for me. I'm sure it stings for Sean as well. But at the same time, I think from a hockey perspective, to me, it's going to be a fascinating series.
Yeah. I think it's going to be a really good series.
And I believe this is the record as far as longest travel between the two teams. It surpassed Boston, Vancouver.
Yeah, it is for the NHL. I'm curious of what I don't know if I'm curious if there's anything baseball or NBA wise that compares or not. But for hockey, yeah, I know for sure it is. So.
And I also wanted to mention that Sean did a really great job, and the reason he couldn't join us the other night was because of the Memorial Cup final. And for those, and we have a lot of them, one of the things that we try to do on Spits and Suds is really teach you or kind of give you guidance on the great game of hockey. And many of us, myself included, will follow things such as the FA Cup, which is a wonderful thing that British soccer does. In other words, it doesn't matter what league you play in. So a Manchester United could basically go to the equivalent of a Plano or Frisco and play a Tier 5 club. And that's just how it works. It's basically drawn. And the Memorial Cup, while different, is really, really cool because it takes teams from various junior leagues and they come together to play in this amazing tournament where basically one winner is decided. Sean, you can dive into this more, but I really enjoyed your aspects of this. And I'm like, you actually got me into this Memorial Cup even more than I was, because it's so cool because you also, whether it's the Ontario Hockey League, whether it's the Quebec Hockey League, there are leagues, but there are also style differences in different leagues.
Yeah. So it's the Memorial Cup's a great event. I told Gavin that at some point he needs to add it to his hockey bucket list, because it was on my hockey bucket list. It's a great event. features the champions of the Ontario Hockey League, the WHL, the Western Hockey League, and then the QMJHL, which actually, Gavin, I only learned recently. The Q changed its name in December this year. The Q is now the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League. It's no
Really?
longer the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League.
Wow.
They changed the name.
And that's Maverick Bourque came from that league.
Yeah, Maverick Bourque came from that league too. And so it's a great event. It's the 3 league champions and the host team. And this year, the host team, the Saginaw Spirit, didn't win the OHL, but they were there because they were the host and they won. Great. One of the greatest, one of the really great hockey games I've covered in my life on Sunday night. You can go check that on EP Rinkside. And it's I love the type of kind of unique event it is because we don't get enough of it in hockey, where you get the OHL style is a little bit different than the Q. The WHL is a little bit different than both of them. It's a fun event. It's really great hockey, and so if you're ever in a spot to go check it out or anything like that, I would highly recommend it because it was also a great experience up in Saginaw too for there. They did a great job there. So yeah, Memorial Cup is definitely one of those where it was on my hockey bucket list, and I highly suggest someone checking it out at some point in their lives as well.
Yeah, just kind of a comparison is like a few years ago, I remember the World Cup was in South Africa, and if South Africa went on to win the World Cup, everyone would be like, oh my God, the only reason they're in there is because they're hosts. Now, Saginaw was really good this year.
Yeah.
However, they wouldn't have made the tournament unless they hosted it, and I find that fascinating when a team that gets in based on that just wins the whole thing. And it almost makes their season because they didn't win the league. So, it's just super cool. All right, a couple things to plug before we go. Steven, who joined us the other night with Sean, co-authors a book with Sean called We Win Here. Still time before Father's Day to get that order in so you can get it. If you have a Stars fan that's a father in your life, absolutely. Or for yourself, it's a terrific read. So, to reach Sean at Shap Shots or Shap Shots is the Substack where you can subscribe and you can read about Joe Pavelski today. He also is the EP Rinkside Draft Guide. He helped with the goaltending version of that, and he writes for EP Rinkside. He also has a brand new article, which we discussed on D Magazine. Am I forgetting anything? The scroll continues to become so enlarged that I have to spend 5 minutes.
I will give one thing.
God, there's more.
I will say, if you need a way to kill about an hour and 20 minutes before there's a Stanley Cup playoff game on Saturday with free nights, go to the late game on Amazon on Amazon Prime Video, and you can watch a hockey movie, and it's fun. It's fun, and and I'm in it, and it's a good way to kill some time while you're looking to find a bit of a hockey fix before that Saturday night game one between Florida and Edmonton.
I need to do that. And from a Spits and Suds perspective, a couple of things. One, I asked earlier for your Stars opinions and questions, and you guys responded as you always do. We're going to do that on another episode, or I'll do it and answer all your questions. So we're going to take care of that. But the reason we couldn't do it today is because of the Joe Pavelski not playing next year news. We felt as though we had to talk about that at length. So just understand your questions will be answered. The other thing, I've seen several new reviews show up, whether it's Apple or Spotify or wherever your favorite podcasts are found. That is so awesome. So if you could just take a moment, and if you could give us a 5-star review like so many of you have, that really helps spread the word, because when someone Google searches, Dallas Stars podcast, we pop up based on that stuff. It's called search engine optimization. I don't understand it all. What I do know is the more you guys speak, the more people can listen. And Sean, I'll also add, my trip list is just getting way too large. So I just throw that out there. If you send a tweet to me, if you're outside of DFW, please let me know where you are. The other day, an amazing listener said, you got to come to Pittsburgh. So I'm thinking of go to a Pirates game and then, meet for dinner or something like that. I even reached out with another listener. I'm going to do dinner over their house with the family. I mean, just all kinds of stuff. It's going to be such a fun episode because I just can't get enough hockey, and I love talking to you guys. So that's going to do it. Hopefully you enjoyed this Joe Pavelski / host. I hate to say it. Postseason #1 episode of Spits and Suds. Sean, you're a beast. Thank you so much for jumping on with this news and joining us today.
Of course, Gavin, it's fun, and we'll have more of these this summer. There's no more games, but it's only 3.5 months until Stars Wings prospect game in Traverse City. So.
Heck yeah, absolutely. I love it. Let's do it. For Sean Shapiro, I'm Gavin Spittle. We'll talk to you soon on Spits and Suds. Have a great day, everyone.